you want to?
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready?
I think so.
Okay. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. We'll start with addition review, additions or deletions to the agenda. Does anyone have anything? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So we'll move on to privilege of the floor. Please remember that you can comment at the public hearing if you want your comments recorded, and that it's 3 minutes. Does anyone have anything for privilege of the floor? Scott, are you raising your hand?
Sorry, I was muted. I think if you look at the minutes, it said that Jamie was not present at the last meeting. So, but I think you were, weren't you, Jamie? Yeah. So that's all. I just noticed that.
Thanks, Scott. I'll double check that right now while privilege of the floor is
And
going.
maybe I'm wrong on it. I just,
No, I'll double check it.
okay.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Does anyone have something for privilege of the floor? Oh,
Jody, I
Rhonda, I
see
see your
Rhonda.
hand.
Let me just double check. Is there going to be a hearing on the South Danby Road parcel?
Yes.
Okay, then I will hold my comments to the hearing then. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone. We'll move to approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Scott, you're totally right on that. If everyone could just hold for one moment, I'm just gonna make that adjustment.
Okay, great.
It looks like it was Alana who was not there and I probably didn't adjust it. I'm just gonna make sure that the names are right for the votes. Yep, okay. So I got that. Any other edits that you gotta get in there?
Everybody's shaking their head no, so I think we're good to go.
Okay,
So if everyone has read the minutes, I need a motion to accept.
I'll motion to accept the minutes. Colleen.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And let's do the roll call.
Cowan,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Maher,
Yes.
Benucci,
Yes.
Scriver,
Yes,
minutes passed as amended.
thank you. The next thing on the agenda is the town board liaison report, and I see that Leslie is here.
Hello.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
Trying to come down to earth. We just got back yesterday from Maine,
Ah,
and there's not a lot of water around here. So anyway, we'll have a board meeting tomorrow night. Nothing terribly exciting, except for there will be 2 public hearings. One about the community development block grant application for housing rehab, and the principal purpose for that is to benefit low or moderate income persons. The second public hearing is about the zoning amendment, potential zoning amendment to expand the Danby neighborhood zone, the Hamlet, the Danby Hamlet neighborhood zone on Bald Hill. And that's the Zen Center property, right? So it's across from Jennings Pond, basically. So those are the 2 hearings. I don't know, Joel has put on there something about two potentially talking about 2 committees, one about noise and one about broadband. So we'll see how that goes. And also looking at the commercial zones to gauge appropriateness for the cannabis sales or consumption sites in Danby. We also, I don't know, Dave, were you gonna talk at all about the Cuba, is that how you pronounce it? Cuba
Cuba.
International, woman, Krista Nunez, came and gave us a presentation. It looks like they bought 14 acres on Hornbrook Road. And they'll be coming to the town board, I guess, with an application for a PDZ for cluster development, around 5 homes. That the area is zoned rural 2. And it's also got a habitat corridor overlay zone on it, which is an important area for some people. But maybe Dave will talk more about that. I'm not sure, but that's something in the wind. That's all I have.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah.
So the next thing on the agenda is the South Danby Road development review. And David, I didn't know if you wanted to tell us anything in particular about it.
Yeah, so I did want to let you all know that I went ahead and scheduled the public hearing for this. Usually we look at something before we schedule a public hearing. In this instance, it was fairly shortly after our last planning board meeting. This applicant was before the code office for a building permit, because I think we need to iron out our system a little bit to make sure. Currently, Steve reviews the building and then sends to me for site plan approval, which means people are basically ready to build. And then if they're in the rural 1, which this is, find out that they need site plan review, which should really be at the beginning of the process. So they were ready to have a home delivered and need to go through site plan review. I have looked at the site, visited the site, and as you saw in the application packet, what they're proposing is putting a house where a house used to be. And it, from my view, is well buffered from the road, both with grade and with plantings that are being preserved. And the applicant happens to be the, I believe, son of the neighbor to the north, the neighbor to the south. As far as I could tell, no one lives there. So it seemed like something worthy of the board, at least having the option to review and move on fairly quickly. So I went ahead and advertised for a public hearing. So you can, if you are comfortable, have the public hearing and make a vote on this proposal tonight. I'm not sure if the applicant is on the call because I haven't seen them.
Well, who's the person that it says iPad? Do you know?
That's us.
That's the applicant. Excellent.
Oh,
Okay.
Did I cover everything?
I'm actually Bobby's dad. We're the neighbor, the bordering neighbor property. Bobby had to work, so he couldn't show up.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
Okay. So is there any more to the application review? I kind of wondered the drawing or the map of, you can tell where the house is proposed and stuff. Do you have, is it clearer if you put it up for us, David, or is it?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I also added to what the applicant provided with a GIS map that I hoped would make it a little more clear.
Okay, great.
So in their building permit application, they had a drawing, but I will share my screen here. Trying to give the board a good idea of what you are looking at. Now you can see this is the full parcel boundary. This is the previous home location and the current proposed home location. We had some discussion with the applicant of making sure that this was 50 feet, which is the required side yard. So they actually moved the house to meet the side yard requirements. They're preserving the tree canopy. I'll show the other drawing in a second, but show that they're 30 feet from the tree line, preserving the hedgerow that's planted across the front. And then this is also planted treed area. Let me share the building permit application. So you can see here, this is not to scale, but that is noted with distances 50 feet from the side, 73 feet from the road, 30 feet from the tree line, 100 feet from the side yard. In this zone, it's 50 feet required for the side and rear and 20 feet required for the front. And they've laid out where the septic will go, or I believe where it is. I believe they're using the existing septic from the previous house.
So we're actually putting a brand new septic system in. If you can hear me.
Yep.
Yes,
Yes,
and this location.
Yeah, we're having Clean Earth put a whole new system in, tank, sand filter, everything. Because we weren't sure how old the existing one was.
Probably a good choice.
Yep, that's what we thought.
okay. Are there other questions at this point?
I just have a quick one. The previous building footprint is, there's no like existing pad or anything. It's just where the house used to be before. Okay.
And that's actually from the county's GIS files, which aren't always 100% exactly on top of building lines, but within 10 feet or so.
Okay. So you said you posted for a public hearing, so if there aren't other questions, we should go ahead and open the public hearing.
Yep.
Don't you love the entertainment?
I only see one hand, as Rhonda.
Okay. Rhonda?
Thank you. I'm Rhonda Roaring, and I live at 571 South Danby Road, approximately 1 mile to the north of this location. I am totally opposed to this building, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, let me tell you that I go past this spot every day. Well, not every day, but quite often. I went by it on Saturday on my way to Elmira. I went by it this morning on my way to Spencer, and I'm going to be going by it tomorrow on my way to Horseheads. So this is a spot I'm very familiar with. I've lived at my location for 45 years. And during that time, I can tell you exactly what happened with that location. So when I moved there, there was a little log cabin there. It was really a log cabin. And it had been built, I assume, as a hunting spot for someone, as we have these all around South Danby and near the Danby State Forest. There are a couple of hunting cabins over on Fisher Settlement Road. There are a couple off Heisey Road. These things pop up and they never have building permits because they were never houses. They were just something small. And this particular building, this little cabin, doesn't look anything like the size that's represented in the drawing. It was much smaller. It was probably 25 feet long and maybe one room, 15 feet deep. And it was there for a number of years. Now, I don't have the full ownership of this assessment. I'm using the assessment rolls here that I've gotten right off the assessment department. So when I started living there in 77, it was a cabin. There was no one living there full-time. I never saw an owner there, nothing. And then my neighbor who lived behind me at the time, Glenn Grossman, purchased the property and he owned it for a short time and then he sold it. And so we're getting on into 2001 when it was purchased by a woman named Mary Ann Donnelly. Now, it just so happened that one day I was driving by and I stopped there and she was there and I stopped and introduced myself and she was outside and I said, what are you planning to do with this? Now, this is 2001. So this was more than a good 15 years after I moved in. And so she said, well, I'm not sure. I might use it as a summer house or I might tear it down. I'm not really sure. So I didn't talk with her after that, but then eventually I think maybe the structure helped her a little bit in making the decision and she tore it down. So there has never, ever been anyone living for any length of time at that property. There's never been a post box there, mailbox, nothing. No one has ever lived there. I don't think that you would be able to find a building permit for that structure.
Mr. Grossman lived there.
Yes, to correct you, Glenn Grossman, that was his primary residence for several years, and that was a 2-story log cabin, much bigger than 25 feet. We're the neighbors.
No, it has never been
we'll have
his
some-
primary residence. He lived
We'll have
behind
some-
me.
We'll have some
No,
time.
it's
We'll have
not.
some time for feedback
Fine.
from the,
Own that
One
property.
person.
Is this
hey,
a hearing or what?
Wait. First of all, one person at a time. David, what were you telling us?
oh, I was telling the applicant that there'd be time for them to respond later. It's Rhonda's turn.
Okay,
Glenn
I muted
Grossman
us.
lived behind me, directly behind me for many years. He did not live in that building ever. And you can ask him. He lives in the last house on South Danby Road in the town of Danby. You can ask him. So when the building fell down or was taken down, whatever, and then she sold it and still no one lived there on a permanent basis. And my feeling is that this house, despite the fact that it's even listed as a one-family residence at one particular point on the assessment.
Rhonda, your time is way more than up. Can you wrap it up?
Sure. I feel that if they want to put a structure up, they need to have 10 acres. That's what the rural one zone requires, and they need to get the 10 acres. Thank you.
All right. So just to clarify for the board, zone does not require an existing lot to have more land to be able to build a house on it, just like we dealt with Durfee Hill. Any existing lot of record can have a house built on it. So it doesn't really matter whether or not there was a building before, regardless of what the county's records say.
okay, so can we hear from the applicant?
Yes, applicant, I muted you, so you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I figured it out here.
There you go.
Technology today.
Just to clarify, I think Rhonda's confused. Glenn Grossman does live behind her. That's Glenn Grossman's father. His son is also named Glenn Grossman. He was the primary residence. He's my friend and I visited him there. He lived there for several years and did have a mailbox, and I don't know why it has anything to do with it, but there's some confusion going on.
There's also approximately 4 rooms downstairs and a loft upstairs, and it was much larger than what she thinks it was.
right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who has comments? Rhonda, can you put your hand down, please, so I know if you put it up another time? Thank you. All right. So are there other comments from anyone? Okay, hearing none. We close the public hearing. And we would consider the preliminary and final approval.
This is Alyssa. I don't have the name for the folks with the iPad, and I'm just in the minutes if you want me to get your names right. If you don't mind just letting me know what they are.
Sure. It's Elizabeth.
Uh-huh.
And Chris Becker, Becker.
Got it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So we can just move forward, right, David?
Yes, you may. Does the board have anything they want to ask about me or the applicant?
No.
It seems pretty straightforward.
Right. Okay. Then we should have a roll call.
Somebody needs to make a motion.
Make a motion, yes.
I can motion that we accept the, was the preliminary?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear all
I
of
know,
that.
I forget the language, but I motion to accept it.
David, could you bring the sheet up maybe?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So the board has the option of considering preliminary or preliminary and final approval or approval with conditions or denial of site plan.
I honestly, I'm comfortable with final as long as they keep it as it is with the buffer from the road. I mean, they put the house like they said where the other house was.
Yep.
I'm fine with that. I don't know if we need more discussion, but I could motion for that now.
Sorry, I just have one other question for clarification. It says double wide. Is it a modular home or it's a mobile home?
Manufactured.
Yeah.
Typically,
Okay.
a double wide would mean manufactured versus modular.
But is it mobile or is it?
I think
I mean,
as far as the zoning is concerned, it doesn't make a difference.
Okay.
All right. So we have a preliminary, does someone, we have a preliminary motion.
I'm
We need
motioning
a-
for, I'm motioning for just approval, the site plan, like. just
Right.
approve it. Yeah,
So you're saying preliminary and final,
yes.
correct? Okay, so we need a second if there's no other discussion.
I second
Thank-
that.
Thank you, Scott. Now we can do a roll call.
Bergman. Did I see Ed come on?
Was,
He was on, he's been on and off several times, so maybe we lost him again.
Okay, Cowan,
yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Maher,
Yes.
Vanucci,
Yes.
Scriber.
Yes,
Okay, that motion passed and it's resolution 12, David.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Jody,
yeah,
Colleen, your audio is unintelligible to me. I don't know if there's something technically.
Oh,
I really want to hear everything you have to say, of course. I have other, Are other people having a hard time hearing Colleen?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, it's going in and out a little bit.
and it's muffled, so I don't know if you have something else on, if it's feedback or whatever.
Yeah, I'm in a different spot.
It sounds almost echoey.
Mhm.
Sorry.
All right. We need to fill out the decision paper.
We did.
Okay, we're all done with it. All right, great. This one was easy. Okay, so we're good to go, right?
We are good to go.
All right. Thank you to the applicant for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next thing is an annexation report.
Yes, so if you'll recall, with annexations, they're a process like a building permit. They are not discretionary. They're just something that people come to the planner, which is me, and I approve, but I do notify the planning board each time that happens. So this approval was, you may not have heard very much about it because it was for the BZA. The BZA granted a variance allowing a smaller lot, but a line was moved between two parcels owned by the same person, and then another line was moved between another two parcels owned by that same person on Comfort Road. And one of them is up for sale, but I just kind of report to you so that there's a record that you know that these annexations have happened. A reminder, an annexation is also known as a lot line adjustment. So it's a change in the lot lines that does not result in the creation of any more lots, just moving land from one lot to another. So we processed two of those since the last meeting, and if we have any questions about those, I could show you them on a map, but I don't think they're terribly interesting. Up to you. And then if we want to move on to the planner report.
Right.
So there's a few things going on, as Leslie mentioned, that I think the planning board would be interested in, and a third that she didn't mention. So first, I want you all to know that there are surveys out and we are trying to get responses from people who are low income, which is defined broadly. It's 80% of median income, so it's pretty close to the middle. People who own homes that have some issue with them that makes them substandard that could benefit from funding for repair. The town is working on an application that would allow us to have a program to help households in that circumstance. It would be, we're working with Toma out of Cortland, who is real experts in this, and they run several programs for Groton and Dryden and other places. I've got Ed trying to come in again. So I'm hopeful that we will have an application in for that shortly. There's a public hearing related to it tomorrow night at the town board. Like I said, we have a survey and we really need more applications from folks. We can only apply for 1/3 the number of people we have on a wait list who are income qualified. So if we can find 30 people, which would be my goal, we can apply for a program to do 10 homes over years. We do not yet have that many people. We can still apply for a smaller number. It doesn't necessarily make us less competitive, but it's a complicated program to manage. And if, we end up having to manage it for 3 homes over 2 years, it's about as much work as managing it for 10 homes. So I'd really rather do it for 10 homes. So if you know folks, if you hear from folks who say, I got this weird survey, it said it was from the town, but I'm not sure it's real. It's real. they can contact me, and they can also mail that directly back to Toma. I think I mentioned it last time. One thing I want people to know about is that if they report something, it's not going to notify code enforcement that they have something that the town should come after them about. It all goes to Toma. Town staff don't actually get a specific thing. So if your septic is failing or your roof is failing or there's, a serious issue, I don't want anyone to worry about putting it on this form that they're going to get in trouble. That's not the case, but we will possibly be able to help. Leslie?
Leslie?
Thanks. David, do you have any guess as to what the income eligibility might be around?
Let me see. I'm sure I can pull that up while I keep elaborating. Do you have anything else?
I just think I'd have a question of, is there any other way we could try to make sure people know about this? I mean, is it something they could put up on that sign at the fire department or something like that so that we could be sure that people know about it? I mean, unfortunately, particularly right now, you get so much what is more or less junk mail from all the campaigns and everything. I think it could get lost in the shuffle.
It wasn't a town newsletter.
It's on the website, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Might be.
and it's been on, I think, mentioned on Facebook, but I'll reach out to the fire department. I've been meaning to build some relationship with them. We don't control, their own organization, but it's an asset and it would be useful.
Yeah, and it's something that I think people drive by, so they haven't paid attention otherwise. They might pay attention.
Yeah. So the income is going to be, the limits are based on the number of people in your household. And what I could find easily was from 2020. But that for a 2-person household, the 80% level would be 54,800. It's probably slightly higher now. For a 4-person household, 86,500.
I would just say that I never received any kind of survey, and I'm on HEAP and SNAP, and so I never received anything. One of the things that you could do is come to the Danby Food Pantry.
So the other survey that's out that I wanted to let the planning board know about, and work that is ongoing, the survey will be going out soon to Hamlet residents, asking questions about their water and septic systems to help bolster our long-term planning and thinking about how we can enable the redevelopment of those key parcels in the middle of the hamlets, and also having the hamlets be the place that development makes the most sense. So we're working with a group that's looking at possibilities for shared wastewater treatment systems at a variety of levels. And part of that is the survey asking people, are there issues with your current system? Have you had any water quality issues? Things like that. So that is going out very soon. It's been also in the newsletter, and will be in the newspaper and things like that. But it's another one of those things where it's kind of asking somewhat invasive questions. And so there may be people who get it, especially with people knowing that you are in a position of leadership in the town. I want you to know that it's out there. So when people ask you about it, you can say, yeah, talk to David West, or it's a legit real thing. So that is also ongoing. One other thing that Leslie mentioned, we are starting to think about and getting towards the point where New York State will be releasing licenses for marijuana sales and marijuana on-site consumption. And as we've discussed in the past, the town opted not, I guess it's a double negative, opted not to opt out of allowing both of those, which means they are allowed. And unless we adopt zoning specific to them, I would interpret them as a retail store and a bar under where those things are allowed in our zoning. So we've started the process of moving towards discussions about, would that be appropriate? Are the places that those are allowed acceptable? Would we want additional rules? The state has some limits on what kinds of rules we can have, and what, because we have not opted out, we cannot put unreasonable restrictions on those businesses. The way what's reasonable is going to be interpreted is not super clear, but one thing we've heard from the state is, are you treating it differently from every other business? For example, are you treating similar businesses that aren't this business significantly differently? So those will be things to think about, and I think we're talking about creating a committee for that, but we're going to start with some public outreach. The other thing that I wanted to get on the planning board's agenda is that there's a new funding program in the state. And unfortunately, I heard about it a bit late. It was actually announced very late, but I didn't hear about it the day it was announced, called New York Forward. Has anyone here heard of the Downtown Revitalization Initiative? So that has been a huge program, New York State program, one of, I think, Cuomo's crowning achievements of having this annual huge pot of money that goes to a downtown in each region. So there's different economic development regions around the state. Each one every year for, I think, the last 5 or 7 years has gotten $10 million for one city. It's pretty much gone to almost every city except Ithaca in our region. This is the last year of it, so maybe Ithaca will get it this year. But the state is starting a new program for small towns. It's for downtowns in small towns. So really hamlet centers, villages, things like that. It's a much smaller amount of money, 2.5 to 4.5 million. It's smaller, but it's still a fair amount of money. To be competitive for it, a town needs to have a slate of projects. And what they really want is small local developers, people rehabbing buildings, making the kinds of investment that can really make a place special to the community again. But they really don't want, a big out-of-town developer doing some totally fresh greenfield thing. It's about community serving, and they want community groups involved and a really strong local component. That application is due next month and was announced a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
I'm not super confident we can have a great slate of projects together this year, but it's a really good thing to be organizing towards and thinking about for next year. I think I'd like to try to put something together. Everyone in the state is scrambling because it was kind of a surprise. It was alluded to, and then it was there real with an application. So I'm interested in participation from some planning board folks if we end up being able to have some crash meetings in the next month. It wouldn't need to be the whole board, it would be individuals, but there's going to be some trainings about, the next one is about community needs assessment and how you can do that with limited resources. And there's other trainings. Some of them have already happened and I'd like to share them with people. So I think I'll share that information with the whole planning board, but I'd be interested in people, particularly if you have ideas or connections of people who would like to do a project that benefits and is in one of the hamlet areas. If we could put together a slate of those, my only concern is, I don't want people to get too excited because it's very short deadline and unlikely with that amount of time we can be super competitive this year, but we can really look towards the longer term for that program. And then finally, there's some Planning Federation trainings coming up. We are more than halfway through the year. We did an hour-and-a-half training on the new zoning at the beginning of the year, and we're planning on doing an hour-and-a-half training with Guy sometime soon in this later part of the year, if he's not too busy. And he started running that by me, but I want everyone to think about needing 4 hours of training, and I'll send out an invite to, there's one happening in Canandaigua if you want to go in person, and there's also a bunch of online options. I think that's my brain dump of a update. Do we have questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Yeah.
David, would that grant for hamlets, would that allow for an infrastructure project?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can go towards. I know with the DRI, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, that this is really considered to be like the next step of and part of. It frequently includes private development projects. It provides funding for private development as well as for public projects, but it's kind of organized by the public sector. But things that were in the city's past applications that haven't been funded, but they've included things like their conference center, apartment buildings, creation of new businesses, purchase of buildings for redevelopment, things like that. So it's pretty broad what it can cover.
David, could it do things like improvements at the Danby Pond?
Yeah, I think it depends on how we defined the hamlet, but I do think because that is, if we define the hamlet as the whole hamlet neighborhood zone and hamlet center zone, the pond is right on the edge of that. So
okay. And could it do additional stuff on the park type thing?
Yep.
Some more structures or something like that?
Yeah.
And could it do anything with we couldn't help with designing, getting somebody to do some cluster housing type stuff or something? I have a friend who has a large house and is Social Security age and can't find something reasonable as a smaller apartment or something like that anywhere. So I think there's a need for that, particularly for people that don't have high amounts of money to do it. Or is that too big a project?
No, it's not too big. I mean, it would have to be, the state has a saying that they want their money to be the last money in, which means that the project has kind of been thought through. There's other people who have money in, and that can be just the owner. But then the state is filling a gap. So it's not the first money that starts a project. There's a plan of how much the project costs and what somebody else is going to put in. And then there's a gap for funding, and that's what the state money would go towards. So it's not something that would fund something all by itself. It's something that would work with local investment from the private sector or from the town or money from the county.
Okay. So I'd be interested in working on that with you.
Yeah. One thing I will note, just because a lot of the things you mentioned were more amenity types, it is an economic development program. So what means the most to them is the creation of jobs and tax dollars. They want it to all be about, serving the community and making it a better place and stuff like that. But one of the main metrics of if you're going to do, it's been used for streetscape improvements, for example. That's to show that you're going to have it to improve tourism and to drive, business to your local businesses and things like that. Not purely just because it's a good thing or, because the park would be nice or things like that. But I think those kinds of things can definitely be woven in there.
Yeah, we could add something like a coffee shop type thing or something else that was part of it. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Scott?
Scott?
The woman she lives on East Miller Road. And she came to us a couple of years ago with a proposal for development.
Oh, Olivia?
Olivia.
Olivia.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice to contact her now.
Yep.
Yeah, that maybe the help from the state might be a catalyst. She might be
Definitely.
interested in working on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually been in contact with her.
Oh,
and she really wants to sell that parcel to someone, but she's interested in working on whatever opportunities we can come up with there. But really, it's the center of the hamlet. It's the kind of key to making it a place. Yeah.
So you could combine something like a coffee type shop and maybe a farm market from people that do stuff that's around the area, and
Yeah.
maybe some
absolutely.
housing stuff. Yeah.
We need the private sector partners to work with. So
Right.
that's definitely something that I've been working on and reaching out to. But if you happen to know about people who have property in that area and are interested in doing something, it's good time to start networking on that, really looking at next year. Like I said, I am interested in getting something in. They tried to keep the application simple. So if I can get something in, late next month, that's great. But I'm really thinking that figuring out this program and pulling together a group of stakeholders and interested folks and really shooting for something strong next year is probably more realistic.
Right. Okay. Is there anything else for the order, or are we actually going to have a short meeting?
Oh, Joel has his hand up.
Well, I
Joel?
was just on the topic that you were just discussing. What about the Eco Village, Whitehawk Eco Village group that wants to do a store?
Oh, yeah,
Ah,
absolutely. That's exactly the kind of things. I've already been in contact with Karthik, who's heading that up, who'd like to bring something similar to Brookton's Market or the market in Trumansburg to Danby, and figuring out how we can help that become a reality.
well, and I remember I don't remember when it was, but a while ago, somebody who had a farm off of the main road who was interested in maybe having a stand to sell stuff. And maybe that's part of what Eco Village would like to do too. I mean, it seems like something like that added with some store type things would be great to have here.
That reminded me, I don't know why it reminded me, but Leslie did mention, and I forgot to mention, the Cuba International Group. So I wanted to give you a little preview of that, because I expect we'll be seeing more, and I expect the town board will want a recommendation from the planning board when that comes forward. I'm sure you all remember the kind of odd Melchin subdivision that we dealt with last year, where it was 3-lot subdivision because a road cut stuff off, and the applicant was looking to sell a piece north of the road to one of our local septic engineers. And we went through the whole process of doing the resource map and coming to a final plat, and then the sale did not go through. Well, this nonprofit has purchased that lot and has started thinking about an application for a planned development zone on that lot. Their goal is to create access to particularly BIPOC people to farming as a lifestyle and for a self-sustaining kind of homestead that would be collective. They are looking at 5 households. So that is more dense than the zoning allows for that area. And really the only way I think they could get approved for it on that site is through a planned development zone. And they are working on that. And as you'll remember, it was a very complicated site with wetlands and slopes and very small buildable area towards the road. What they're actually looking at is trying to find more buildable area at the back of the parcel where it's uphill significantly. Again, a lot of challenges, a lot of technical challenges for the possibility of 2 bridges there. I'm not sure what will come of it, but they have started talking to the town board, gave a presentation recently and expressed their interest in working on that, working towards that goal. So I expect that we'll see more of it, but I think it's good for you all to know that that's coming. And I assume the town board isn't required to, but I assume the town board will want input from the planning board on that decision. Which Joel has reminded me a part of that would have made him and some others more comfortable is if there were the opportunity for transfer of development rights, which we have not gotten to draft a generic environmental impact assessment for that kind of program. And it's something that is in my court waiting to start the process. It's a big process, which is why we didn't do it with the zoning update. It requires scoping, and I am hopeful that we'll be able to move that forward soon, or before the end of the year at worst.
Scott, do you know, is that, oops, Ted has got his hand up, but do you know, remember that little store that was out that that you had visited?
Oh, yeah. We were.
Is
gonna-
that still in existence? Do you know?
Yes, I was by there a week or 2 ago. And yeah, we should do we'd try to again arrange a trip up there.
Where is that?
It's up in King Ferry.
In King Ferry, it's an interesting little store. I mean, they have,
Yeah.
like local farmers sausage in it, and they have a little coffee shop, and then they have people who do arts and crafts, so that there's an arts and crafts area in it. But it also has some of your typical, stop and get quick things, right?
Yeah. And
it hasn't changed.
You can get sandwiches and soup there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty neat little store,
Yeah.
and it's out in the middle of nowhere, kind of.
Yeah.
It's also a gas station,
Yes.
the only one in the area.
Oh, really? Oh, that's right. I forgot that.
Do they sell craft beer?
I'm sure they do.
I think
Boy, if
that's
we
what
could-
that's what makes Brookton's Market make money is
The craft
the
beer.
Yeah.
Well, what about maybe we could do something with South Hill Cidery,
Yeah.
or, I mean, there's enough breweries and,
Yeah, South Hill's
Wine
at
place-
Brookendale now, I think.
oh, is it?
Yeah.
Would Olivia, is it possible? I'm sure it's possible. What if you got, and back to the store? So Olivia owns that land. What about, just a whole bunch of investors, a whole bunch of small investors? That could be organized in theory, couldn't it?
Yes, in theory.
Well, I don't have, I don't have money to throw away, but I would think if something was well planned, I wouldn't mind
Yeah.
considering, again.
Right. What
I'm
that kind of
talking
thing really
real-
needs is
you need a lot of people to make it palatable to just, people who aren't looking for investments. But I've seen that done.
Yeah. Yeah. And what that really takes is a champion who's going to be the developer.
Olivia.
She will not do it.
Oh,
I've been hounding her for years before I came to Danby to be that
no.
developer. We need somebody else that she would work with. I mean, she said that she's happy to own her finance and do creative things, but she doesn't feel up to being the developer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ted, you have your hand up.
Yes, it's a question for David. As Leslie alluded to, and you came right out and said, building on that property on Hornbrook Road is challenging. And I'm sure the planning board is aware of some of the difficulties from the discussions that they've had about that property. My question, my curiosity is, did they just come to the town with a wild ass plan to try and put a whole bunch of houses there, or did they consult with you first?
That's a fair way to say that. They did consult with me. We discussed the difficulties, and they decided that they thought they could overcome them.
Well, thank you. That is a fair answer. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else from people? It would be if people can think about at least someone else or someone's else that would be interested in meeting with David. And I'm perfectly willing to do some of that, to do some brainstorming. That would be great. Okay. So we can be adjourned.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good end of your summer.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Hmm.
Hey,
Hey,
David.
Ed, sorry you had such a hard time getting in, and
I don't get it. Yeah, I'm usually pretty good with technical stuff. And the last couple of times I tried my iPad, I finally had to switch over to my phone because it just couldn't get stuff to work. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't hear, I could see, but I could not hear anybody.
Hmm.
If you have
Yeah.
room, Ed, I have too many iMacs in the house, and we could talk about getting you a real screen.
That might be a way to go.
Hmm.
Because I've got a computer, I got to play with it, but because for some reason it wasn't at the last meeting, it would just not, something wasn't working with the sound. So I'll play with that. If I still have trouble, yes, we'll have a discussion about iMacs. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, you'd make us happy here.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Good night, everybody.
So, all right. Good
Good
night.
night, Jody.
Bye.
David, do I need to come sign the thing we did tonight?
yes,
When will it be ready?
it can be ready tomorrow if you're available.
Yeah, I can stop by sometime tomorrow. I have to probably early afternoon. I have to go do a treatment at like 12:45 for somebody. So I could either stop by before or after.
Why don't you come before?
Okay. I will come see you.
Sounds good.
Mhm. Bye.
Bye-bye.